Oh, we got a great guest today, Scott. Real good one. Top
Unbelievable.
top notch. This might be one of the best looking people I've ever seen in my life, coming on our show today. But before we start, welcome to Your Crisis Coach with Scott H. Silverman, that gentleman right there, and myself, Fred Carroll. How are you, Scotty?
I'm great, Fred.
How great are you, Scott?
Well, I am using new tools to feel better and be better. And I'm trying to be effective with that. I think it's working. So, I got nothing to complain about. So before we ask you how you are today, because we're gonna change it up a little bit today, Fred, I'm gonna ask you a couple questions, and we're gonna have that normalized, free flow conversational piece. But we talk a lot about a lot of stuff, and first and foremost, I want to share how I appreciate our relationship and how much I look forward to 2 p.m. on Mondays, my time, and 5
Yes.
p.m. your time. And I think it's important for people to know that you and I have physically never met. And we've been at this now, I think, over 5 and under 6 years. Is that about right?
Right around there, 6-year mark, somewhere around there.
And we continue to push forward and move towards our million subscribers. I don't know how far away we are today, but
Very far. We're very far away.
995,000 and 646 or something like that. We still have our 3 favorite ones though. So today, Fred, I want to learn a little bit more about you, and I want our viewers and our listeners to learn a little bit more about you. So let's start with, who is Fred today? Who is Fred?
Who is Fred today? You love these tricky questions because that's such a wide range of things. But if you're getting at where I currently am mentally and physically, so I guess in the easiest terms is, I'll tell you what, I'm happy. I'm damn happy. That's one thing I am, is damn happy. I am so, obviously finances matter. Financial freedom matters, and it just matters for everybody. Everything costs money. But the lesson I could at least give to people is how important it is to plan for your future and save, because I wouldn't be allowed to do what I'm doing right now if I didn't do that 10 years ago, where I did start saving money and stuff. So I don't get a paycheck. There is no paycheck coming in for me, and I'm still happy. So it doesn't correlate. It doesn't make sense to people when I tell them that I make videos for a living, that I do YouTube for a living, because they go, well, you just said you're not making money. How are you doing it for a living? Well, it doesn't happen overnight. That's another mystery. Everybody thinks it happens overnight. It takes 30 years to become an overnight sensation. But happy is worth more today to me than misery with a job.
So do you think, could we spin that phrase a little bit? Could we say that you get an emotional paycheck, you get a happy paycheck, your reward comes in the form of balance, happiness, freedom? It sounds like you're sleeping well, probably eating well, and your worry well is dried up mostly, and you're focused on what's in front of you. And that's something, no matter how much money you have, you cannot buy that.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to describe, but listen, this is only a year. A year from today, I might be in another miserable job, because that's not all the money I have, but that's all I budgeted for this 1 year. I bought myself a break. Now, is it the perfect time? I don't know. Everybody asks me that. They say, you're 56 years old. Is now when you want to take that break? And I say, well, There's no promise I'm going to be 57. There's no promise I'm going to be 97. When do you get the break? I needed the break. I needed to get away from the corporate world, which was just dragging me down. And the things I loved to do became chores. So the hobbies, let's call this a hobby, and making videos and doing the YouTube was satisfying. I loved it, but it wasn't, it was becoming a chore because I'd work all day, run home, got to do this, because it's very regimen. You have to have a schedule when you're doing this stuff, just like you and I have a schedule. So, yeah, I'm lucky, and I recognize how lucky I am that I was able to go to the movies today at 11 in the morning. That's not everybody could do that. And it's not even my saving view wasn't necessarily. I worked hard. I worked hard physically my whole life. I made decent money. I've never made great money, but I've made decent enough money. I've lived a life that's very simple. I don't spend on crazy stuff besides my electronics, but my rent is affordable. My living expenses are affordable. My kids are grown and on their own. So I took the opportunity.
You didn't just go to the movies today. You took one of your children, gave them a ride, and
Yep.
then while they took care of business, you went to the movies. So there's a saying I like that you can't keep it if you don't give it away. And I find that when I'm giving it away, and I give a lot away. I mean, I work many hours every week, but probably 20 of it's just altruistic time with people and trying to be of service and trying to be available to others. And sometimes I forget myself in the process, kind of like what you described. You go to work, you come home, and you're stressed out, and some people can decompress in 30 minutes. Some of us take longer, and my head continues to spin. You've heard me say it. My mind is like a bad neighborhood. I never go there alone. So tell us about your kids. You talk about your kids, but kind of only briefly. Talk about, I know you have a son and you have a daughter.
I have two daughters, two daughters and a son.
Okay.
I have the older daughter who's in her mid 30s, Alyssa. I don't have a relationship with her, but I'm aware of where she is, who she's with, and all that stuff. I'm aware of all that. That's the child I had at 18 years old,
Mm-hmm.
with a girl that just was somebody I met. So it was a very drawn out. It didn't go well. It wasn't planned. It wasn't a relationship. It was you want to call it a error, not the child, but the moment being, not safe, not doing what you're supposed to do. But I was 18. So I made that. And by the time I even knew that child was mine, she was already 5 years old. That's how long it took the system to get through, because back then they didn't have DNA. They only had the blood test and court and all this stuff. At this point, I was already having other children in a marriage. And I wasn't the greatest. I wasn't available. I wasn't an available father. I was working 3 jobs. It was a child that I had no connection to. And it just nothing ever came together.
So you never knew that you had that daughter until she was 5.
Well, I knew about her, obviously, from the day she was born.
Got it.
Didn't see her. Put it this way, I didn't have any visitation rights till she was 7 years old already. Was the first time she was allowed to stay with me at my house with my wife and my kids.
Got it.
And, but then there's Anthony. Anthony lives in Salt Lake City. Gay man, married.
He's a musician. He's a musician, right?
He's a piano player and singer. And he's interesting. It's an interesting relationship. Having a gay child is, to me, it's easy. I know for some people it's difficult. Wasn't always easy, and not everything I know or hear is easy because I can't relate to it and stuff, but I don't have any issues with it.
You say you mentioned it's an interesting relationship. What do you mean by interesting?
Well, because we both have different, like when I look at him, sometimes it comes off as disappointment, right? And a lot of my disappointment in him isn't personally in him. I just, you know how as a parent, sometimes you project yourself onto them. I look at somebody with so much talent like he has with the singing and the piano playing, but he treats it as a hobby. In other words, it's just extra income for him and stuff. In my mind, I think he should be writing songs for people. And that's where we have an interesting, headlock sometimes because I expect more. But it's just me being, just recognizing his talent. But I also recognize he can make his own choice to do whatever he wants.
What do you think he wants you to be doing? Or does he think about that he shares?
Well, the one thing, if you ask anybody in my family or kid, he is a very closed off type man at this point. In other words, my phone's not ringing with him on the other end. He's always out doing his own thing. I have to call him. I'll see him next week, though. Actually, 2 weeks. I leave to go to Salt Lake City. And listen, he's an interesting kid. He was tough. But you got to remember, I raised these kids on my own. They had no mother, and a father that worked 3 jobs. So they had a lot of freedom at a young age. So he made a lot of mistakes that I should have been there to catch. From smoking at a young age, drinking at a young age, maybe drugs. I don't know about that and stuff. But he turned out well. He turned his whole life around. He turned out well. And then the prize child, and my other kids get mad about that, but Riley is 25, and she's the closest child I have. I mean, I could throw a rock right now and hit her house, if I wanted to. But that's a reverse interesting relationship, because she's somebody, and I'm so thankful for this. She's somebody that calls me at 11 o'clock at night and says, I'm down at the bar at the corner. Why don't you come have a drink? She's not afraid of me being around. And I like that. And
my kids have never done that.
Well, there's a reason. But do you think if it was reversed, if you weren't a sober gentleman, you think your children would be more apt to invite you to those?
Oh, my father-in-law used to drink, and he and I drank together. So that was back in the day. No, it would be, yeah. But we socialized. They grew up not seeing me drink, so it's not part of my life. And that part of what they do, and they both, they'll have a cocktail, and we go out to dinner sometimes, or a glass of wine. And that's fine. It's just everybody has, I think, different ways, and the relationship they have with their mom is different than what I have. Like you said earlier. So, what is it you've enjoyed most recently about being a dad? Because it sounds like the early years you were tangled with work and a lot of work. It sounds like, but what is it that you really, maybe through your maturation, you've learned being a dad has offered you some kind of not the best word, but rewards? What is it you've experienced in the last couple of years that you really enjoy that you probably wouldn't have if you hadn't changed some of your thinking or your lifestyle?
Well, I do enjoy that. It took me a while to come to grips because everybody always told me, you had kids too young. You had kids too young. What are you thinking? You can't even afford these kids, blah, blah, blah. The same thing. My mother used to tell me, if you wait to afford If you wait to have a kid until you can afford it, you'll never have a kid because you'll never afford it. It's just they're expensive in different levels. But I like that I'm young-ish and don't have any of the. I look at some friends that have young kids, and I'm like, oh man, I could not deal with that right now. My back hurts just watching. I couldn't be at these little sporting events and stuff. But what's made me, as my children have aged and matured, I have less anxieties about what they're going to be, who they're going to be, whether it's right or whether I agree with what they are or not. But they're not getting I'm not getting calls from the cops. They're good, decent kids that in hindsight didn't cause me all that much stress. They kind of adapted to the same struggles I was going through. Yeah, we didn't have a lot of money, but they had a roof over their head. They had food. My parents were always there. Maybe they didn't. Mommy issues are a little different than daddy issues. And in a weird, not in a weird way, but it's nice to, at least I could look myself in the mirror with some pride and know I did the job. Regardless of my first daughter not being great with her, I learned and changed and took it to the extreme. For a father to raise just Riley, you take Riley, for instance, I had to go through all those things without a woman helping, like periods and birth control and all those things that most fathers can't handle that. And I think I handled it like I handle everything with comedy. I use my jokes and my comedy to get through it, but it also, it changed the way I view, like I understand the sexualization of a young girl now, what it's like for her to deal with this at such a young age. How, because I've got to see it from the mother's point of view, because I had to sit on the couch and go through the breakups with her. I had to listen to the, phone calls and all that stuff. Funny story though, Scott, I did once made the biggest mistake, maybe my biggest mistake as a parent. I didn't trust that my daughter was telling me the truth. She was like 14 years old. And, one of those, I believe she was sleeping at Mary's house or something like that. Well, I didn't believe her. So I put a baby monitor under her bed. Okay. Put a baby monitor under her bed and eavesdropped on the conversation. Biggest mistake ever. There are things no father should ever hear. And when you created that loop, boy, it still haunts me to this day to listen to like young girls like it's a locker room. It's almost like you're in the men's locker room,
Did she find out about it?
Oh, she's aware of it now. She's aware of it. That's another interesting thing about having older children. That eventually they come out and start telling you the truth. Now it's a joke and they know you can't punish them. So they're like, hey, you remember that time you thought I was here? I was actually here. It's a little embarrassing sometimes when I go, boy, I didn't see that. I didn't know that. Or to feel like your child fooled you. It could be shocking. But if you just laugh through it and realize every single person makes mistakes. Every one of us have done something stupid. Every one of us has lied to our parents. I mean, I was a pro at it. So, but other than that, that's my children. That's what I got.
So do you think any of your kids would like to come on here and share their side of the story about you?
I think Anthony definitely would, because he's a little more flamboyant and active, and he's maybe the strain that I was talking about between my son and me is actually because we're the same damn person. You know, maybe that's probably a lot of the stress that we have with each other. That
What,
and money.
what does that mean? You're the same person. How so?
Well, he likes to joke around like I do. He deflects like I do. Basically, I trained him, I guess. I basically trained him. And it's it's nothing detrimental. Listen, I'm staying at his house. Well, I'll take him out to dinner. We have fun. It's just when you do have a gay child, our lifestyles are different. Now, I've been to the gay bars. I go with him, and I happily go with him. I have no problems with that. And I learned a quick lesson, actually, and I'll cue you in on this. And for anybody out there, any of the single men out there, that's where all the beautiful women actually are. They're at the gay bar because it's the only place they can go and have a drink where they could actually have a conversation without somebody constantly hitting on them. And then if you walk in there as the father of a gay child and you're supportive of him, you're already in the conversation. You're already a decent human, so you're safe. So I've managed to move it into my zone more.
Got it. So you can add that to your resume. You're always picked to play spin the bottle at the gay bars.
Mm-hmm.
So moving forward, what is it you love most about what you're doing now? I mean, and you can pick whatever now you want within that framework.
You mean like personally what I'm doing now in my business structure and stuff?
Well, how you spend your days, how you spend your nights. I mean, I kind of know what you're doing, and I know you're really immersed in this work.
So a lot of my day, so I can tell you this. I wake up at 6 a.m. every morning. I'm a early guy. 6 a.m. I am in front of my computer by 7 a.m. with fresh coffee. At 10, that's when I eat breakfast. And by noon, I'm back at my computer and I'm there until 11 o'clock at night, working on videos, working on channel structure, working on this show. And I don't go anywhere, Scott. I really don't leave the house. I shop. Conveniently, I'll shop day to day. We garden a lot outside, so a lot of fresh vegetables and stuff. I'm not big on, I don't need to be at the bar. Like Friday night doesn't mean anything to me. I can't even tell you the last time I was at an actual bar that didn't have a reason for me to be at the bar. You know, I wasn't just going to find a date or anything like that. It's not part of my life, drinking. And I'm no prude about it. Listen, I could tell you my favorite, you had asked me earlier about favorite thing about being a parent. And I think one of the things I'm beyond the pride of raising these children and they're turning out decent, that their biggest complaint is they've never seen me drunk. That's their biggest complaint, my children. They've never seen me drunk. And I think
they form that as a complaint.
Yeah, well, that's the joke around the dinner table and stuff like that. Because everybody's seen their parents drunk, you know, for the most part, percentage wise. You know, dads come home after after a wedding or something, and they've never seen me drunk, and that's pretty amazing for me, you know, to me, not for me, but that's how little I drink alcohol, and I enjoy a good drink, but that's the problem. I enjoy a good drink. I don't enjoy, a vodka and orange juice, or I like rum and Coke. That's my go-to. But when I say a good drink, my drinks are going to cost $15, $16. I want a cocktail that's made in front of me with fresh stuff and expensive liquors. So when I do have a drink, it's usually mixed with coffee, Irish coffee or something like that. And it's after a meal. Other than that, maybe a case of beer would last me a year. I still have beer in my refrigerator from a 12 pack from the Super Bowl in January. So
let's talk about. I know you've written a couple books. What is it like? 17 books, 16 books?
16 or 17. I
Yeah.
get confused because I have 4 right now that are written. I just not releasing them. I'm down on it. I'm down on the whole
Book
indie
thing.
authors, the indie author part. There's just, I put so much work and joy into it. I don't get it back. You only get the negatives back. You don't get the positives back. You get the bad things, similar to what you were talking about, the title of your book,
Yeah.
and stuff.
How do you write? How do you write your books? Do you take a pencil to paper? Do you type on a computer?
No, I'm very unorthodox, but what I do is I write chapter to chapter. If my mind was set on writing a book right now, and I knew it's going to be 250 pages long, I would sit down. I'd have a game planned, like a whole structure, how this book's going to begin, middle, end. I already know the whole book. Now I got to write it. I would write a chapter a day, but that chapter would also be edited that day, which isn't a good thing. You shouldn't be editing. First of all, you shouldn't edit your own work.
Right.
I do. Because my voice, everything, I wouldn't have written it if I didn't think it was good. So that's what an editor for is, to tell you, here, moron, why'd you put this name here? So I don't always catch all the errors and mistakes. And I'm not some great author that is going to write the next big story and stuff. It's honestly, becoming an author was more, I don't know, it was more of a gotcha moment, because I do only have an 8th grade education, legitimately. I never finished the 9th grade. And you get labeled, you get labeled as dumb just because you don't have the paper. So I was able to prove that, well, I could write books. I could do this. There's plenty of things I can do. Just because I'm not paper educated doesn't mean I'm not smart or intelligent. And, Stephen King played a large role in it. I'm a big fan of Stephen King. And listen, they're decent reads. I've never written a novel, though. That's something I'd like to do once.
So do you have a certain theme? Like the galaxy, the stars, the earth, animals. What is it? Are your books connected in any way, shape, or form? Are they more?
Not very much, but I like psychological. I like the psychological spin on stuff. I'm not a big horror guy, so I'm not creating just some monster, but I like almost like the lesson to be in the story. But I don't, I've got a book right now called A Dying Bride. And that's about a girl who is approaching 30, but she always wanted to be married. It was her dream as a child. But she's also fighting a disease that is going to kill her. It is going to kill her. And the long short of the story is her boyfriend still proposes. They plan the wedding, knowing everybody knows she's sick and stuff. But what they don't know is that she's going to choose assisted suicide after the wedding that night.
So where did that thought come from? That storyline? How did that come about? What triggered that?
So a lot of it gets triggered by trends and stuff. So whenever I read a lot, read a story about, is assisted suicide a right? Is it a good thing? Do we get to choose? So I like the psychological. I like that it's a story that actually could happen. It's not monster under the bed. It's reality.
So
Beautiful
you get a
young
thought,
people get sick.
you get a thought that triggers a theme. I'm going to use the word theme, and then you just kind of expand on that theme, or
Yeah, because
do you have the end in mind?
well, I always know the end of my story.
Interesting.
Sometimes I even write it before. But one of my first book was called Emily Anonymous, and that was about a girl that was bullied and committed suicide. But you don't know if she actually committed suicide. Did she commit suicide? Is she just passed out? We never know until the end. And I try to spin it into a positive because that's once again something we deal with every day. Kids that are bullied and end up taking their lives. Dead Flowers. My book Dead Flowers was about a question I had in my own mind of whether being a serial killer is DNA related. So I created a grandfather and a grandson who were both committing crimes on different coasts. And when the grandfather passes away, the grandson comes to the funeral in a small town here in Connecticut, Union, and discovers that his grandfather was doing this. Nobody knew his grandfather was, but he's also one. So I kind of just put a spin on that. It's
So
not my favorite.
who was one of your biggest influencers growing up? A teacher, a parent, a neighbor, a sibling? Who was one of your biggest influencers when you were growing up?
Well, I think a lot of it I didn't have the nicest childhood. It wasn't bad from the outside. Like you, of course, always had money, always had a nice house, always had clothes, food, all that. But
Stuff. You had stuff.
yeah, I had all the things that make it look like you're taken care of. But without the disparaging, my father went the religious route. My parents were divorced when I was 2. So I have no memory of them living together. Don't even remember my father ever being in the house. And both of them remarried pretty quickly and each had more kids pretty quickly. So me and my sister, the two that were from the original marriage, kind of got pushed to, I don't know, it's the 70s too, different time, but kind of got not left behind, but we were less important. It
When you
felt from,
when you say the original marriage, these are your biological sisters. Is that correct?
I have one full sister, same parents.
Okay.
And then I have 2 sisters, one from each new marriage. So they're not sisters. They're not related at all, but they're my sisters.
Do you have a relationship with them today of any
Yep.
kind?
All 3 of them. Yep. Yeah. I have a closer relationship with my older sister, the one that's same parents, because we both went through the same stuff.
Right.
The same
We got to
life.
get your posse together. I think it would be fun to have them all, on a I don't know, 5 or 6 of them, maybe their kids and your kids, and
Yeah, but you know what the problem with that is? Even in our family dynamic, my family is so dysfunctional. Like the wedding I'm going to in 2 weeks, that's my older sister's daughter is getting married, and that's my son happens to live out there. Even the girl whose wedding I'm going to, I've probably met her 4 times in my life. I have
wow.
no relationship with her. My nephew, I think I've met him twice, maybe 3 times. He's 27. I have no relationship with him. My sister moved out west, and I never have been out there. I've never been to her house. In our whole dysfunction, my other sister lives in Albany, and my other sister lives in my town, and I see her less than the other 2. So it's complete dysfunction. My father lives down south. My stepfather lives 2 towns over. Only see him on holidays. It's very dysfunctional. It's a complete dysfunction with, you know, the arguments are always, if we sit around as the children, me and my sisters, we always get the, no, that's not how it happened. My memory is never their memory. And one sister gets ashamed. Me and my older sister often talk about it. My younger sister will say, that never happened. And we're like, you weren't even alive yet. You weren't even here yet. How do you know what we were? Well, mommy would have told me, or something like that. So it was decent. My biggest unfortunate event happened when I was molested at a very young age. And obviously I talk about it. I wrote a whole book about it. But that's when and it still affects me today, because going through that and holding it in, gives you a better understanding of why. For instance, I understand why a woman would come out 30 years later and say she was raped. And people will get on her. Well, why didn't you say something 30 years ago? There's a reason. There's shame. There's shame. And when you're a young child like I was 7 years old. And it happened until I was 10, from 7 to 10. And it was a female babysitter, a young female babysitter. And of course, that then brings up the, oh, lucky you. I get a lot of that from the locker room type guys.
Right.
That's not lucky me. That's not lucky me, because at 7 years old, you are not prepared for what I was learning. I was learning full on sexual activity by 8 years old, with a young woman. She was probably 17 when I was 8, but a full-bodied woman, and learning things that 8-year-olds are still supposed to be learning their ABCs, and I wasn't. I was learning that, but I never told anyone. I didn't tell anybody till I was 50. It's only 6 years ago. So I held that in, but also as a young man, and it ties back to the first child, I was sexually active at such a young age against my will. And then by 13, with my consent, but with skills that no 13-year-old should have. Now, all this sounds great, right? From a locker room standpoint. This all sounds like, oh my God, you must have, because I'm sleeping with 17-year-old girls at 13. Oh, this is great. It's not great inside, because all it became was complete manipulation, sex as a weapon, no true love, none of that. And you end up just notches on your bedpost. That's all they become.
So I want to, because our time is kind of running up, but I want to go back to your books for a second. Which one is the one that really you're most proud of, and what's it about?
Well, the problem is I'm a huge, even in life in general, I'm such a critic of my own stuff. I never give myself permission to succeed. It's so stupid and weird. I almost create my own failures. Like I don't deserve it. So I'm never proud of my books. I always find something wrong with them. But my children's books, I wrote a middle grade series called The Adventures of Left Eye Lazy. That was fun to write because although it's fictional as you read it, it actually isn't. everything I say in that is my life, right? Even from the molestation and stuff. But I put a positive spin on all of it and wrote my own story. So I took my actual childhood and made it a happy ending at the end. So those books were fun to write.
Got it. All right. Well, I have a favorite question I like to ask all of our guests. So tell me, what is it that I haven't asked you that I should?
Well, because you know me well enough, it's hard to say you should have asked it. I guess on the show purpose, we could have talked. One thing I have is a very deep connection and passion for suicide prevention, for the prevention of suicide. And that's due to not only my own life, which I dealt with planning a suicide and attempting a suicide and stuff, but watching so many friends go down that path and, lack of a better word, succeed at what they were doing. People that have failed, people that have thought about it, but talking about it makes me so much better. When I could help somebody that's going down that, and it's difficult sometimes because I'm known as cracking jokes that it's hard to be serious about. But yeah, suicide prevention's a big something that I care about, and I don't have a lot of that in my life beyond the Red Sox, the Patriots, anything that's not sports related. Suicide prevention is, and I'm seeing it again. I can't stand seeing like parents going through this, especially people whether I know them or through a friend. It's still happening. It's still there.
I think part of your problem, Fred, is you like people. That's why it impacts you.
Well, I do. For somebody that's as introverted as I am from a stay-at-home type, because truthfully, that's another thing people misconceive. I don't have like a ton of friends. I don't date a ton. I haven't been in a real relationship in over 5 years. It's
that's
not
because
that
you don't leave the house. You got to kind of leave the house.
that's a problem, yes. But that all goes back to believe it or not, everything goes back to the trauma, the childhood trauma, and not feeling good enough. Like you don't deserve it. I'm such one of my biggest flaws is self-punishment. I self-punish myself so often that my children are aware of it and call me out on it. Because if I make a mistake, I will skip a concert that I have tickets to because I made that mistake. I will punish myself. I'll say, you don't even deserve to go to that concert. You're not going. Because that's how I was brought up, on a lot of negativity. And not that my parents were bad or anything. They just didn't have the tools for those things.
Got it. All right. You want to take us out?
Yeah. So this has been your crisis coach with our guest today, me, Fred Carroll, with Scott H. Silverman, myself. And if nobody has told you they love you today, we do. And we will see you next week with a guest, I believe, a real guest. Right?
That's the plan. I got a couple of potentials. I just wanted to get through the weekend, and I'll be reaching out next couple of days.
All right. Okay. Hang out.